should tell you the cemetery was founded 1855, and at that time there was a movement to have these big, like kind of rural cemeteries. This was probably on the edge of the city at that time, and just like Laurel Hill in Fairmount Park, and people used to even come, especially Laurel Hill, they would picnic in the cemetery. It was a green space. But this one was a little different in that some of them were in like, really like wealthy people were buried there, but this, because it was so close to the streetcar city, as West Philly developed, became a cemetery for all people. It wasn't just wealthy people, and so that's kind of unique about it. And this is considered a historic cemetery. It's not active for burial anymore, and it was sort of abandoned by the owners. Not sort of, it was. It was neglected, and then I think it says here the last known member of the association died in 2004, and then the cemetery closed in 2011. And it wasn't being maintained. It was horribly overgrown. There's so many invasives in this area, invasive vines, and all that just took over. So this neighbors formed one woman in particular who was very active, and we could probably find out her name from one of the other people. She started a friends group. Their first thing they had to do was gain control of the access, because it had become a dumping ground too. People were coming in here and dumping all kinds of stuff. They rebuilt the fence on King Sussing Avenue, where the main entrance is to the cemetery on the Philadelphia side, and secured these sides too with the gate and the barriers, and with cameras to stop the dumping. And then slowly they've been restoring section by section, uncovering gravestones that weren't seen for decades. And but what's really neat too is they developed a strategic plan that they want to turn this into a historic cemetery and nature sanctuary. So, and that's part of the reason we're here today, is I work for Cobbs Creek Environmental Center, and we want to experience both aspects of the cemetery. This is black walnut. This is the tree. You have to be careful they don't hit you in the head this time of year. And you can eat them. They're just very hard to crack open. So this is the outer shell and fruit, and then inside is a nut that you have to. I usually try to crack it open with a hammer. And they're definitely edible, but the walnuts we get in the supermarket are English walnuts. But the last owners, they were not doing they had stopped doing a lot of maintenance way before they abandoned it. It's not like they abandoned it in this pristine state. I don't know if the birds eat this or not. If they did, it would be okay. Yeah. But you can see what these vines do. They eventually smother some trees. Yeah.
And that's the porcelain berries?
That's the porcelain berry. There might be other stuff in here, like grape. Might be grape. This is mile a minute. Yeah. And here's the berries, and it has little thorns on it, and it will just engulf whole areas. See, there are people buried here.
Some of the lumps under there are probably more headstones.
Yeah, probably. The one man that was clearing told me just the weight of the vines and the trees pushed a lot of these down. And they are slowly trying to reseat them if they can. Yeah. So first they find them. And in some cases they're removing trees. This is somebody's plot. So this was the entrance to the plot. You see these at Woodland cemetery too, and then the plot will come back in here. Oh, Strawbridge, that's a big name in the city. So the most famous burial here is Betsy Ross. Do you know this, you know that story? She's on the, I think it was on the Philadelphia side. Poor woman, she was buried in a free Quaker cemetery downtown, and I know a lot of the center city cemeteries were eventually, like, you know, the bodies were moved elsewhere and the building was erected. So she was moved to Mount Moriah, and then I think it was in 1975, yeah, her descendants decided she should be buried at the Betsy Ross house. So they had a forensic anthropologist try to determine I think they found the grave, but they couldn't find the body at first. So then they searched around. They believe they found the right body remains, and she was reinterred, I guess, at the Betsy Ross house. But there, you know, as to whether they actually got her remains, we're not sure. And the other really interesting thing is there's two plots maintained by the Department of Veteran Affairs. Because the cemetery over here that we'll see is Civil War Army veterans and Civil War deaths during the Civil War, because there was a huge hospital in West Philadelphia called Satterley, in what we now call University City. And so there's a naval cemetery way up here from the Philadelphia. Most of the burials, I think, are from naval veterans that lived at there was a naval retirement home in South Philadelphia. Man.
John.
Yeah. Who knew?
So you think they're setting up to replace those?
I can't imagine what else. Like, look at this.
And this is the replacement pile. Wow.
Yeah, it must be the veterans affairs. I can't imagine who else would have the money to do all this. Yeah, you can tell from the leaf here. And tulip poplars are real straight. And they grow fairly quickly. But I'd still say, I bet this is here since the founding.